Hi, my name is Charpentier and I'm a level 2 USAW weightlifting and CrossFit coach. And today we're going to talk about how to clean a barbell for the first time. So I'm going to be using a training bar today. This is about 7 kilograms or 15 pounds. And I do suggest using something that has a little bit more weight to it besides a PVC pipe, since the weight of the bar will help you when you're trying to establish your front rack for the first time. So let's talk about the key points of the front rack position. First of all, when you are catching the bar in a clean on the shoulders, you want to make sure that your trunk and your body is supporting the bar. So often a drill that I like to give beginners is to do something called the Frankenstein hold, where you have the bar resting on your shoulders. If you take your beefy part of your deltoid, the round part of your shoulder, and kind of have the bar slightly behind that so it's right up against your neck, right up against the collarbone, that's exactly where you want the bar to be. And if this is your first time having the bar in this front rack position and it feels uncomfortable, that's fine. It will take a bit of time to get used to having the sensation of the bar there. I know for me, when I did the front rack for the first time, that it felt really hard for me to breathe at a certain point in time. It's just not a position that we typically do very often. And we'll start with having the arms out in front. And obviously if you have the lower your arms go, you'll notice that that bar wants to start rolling forward. So you want to do your best to make sure that this upper part of your arm stays at least parallel to the ground, if not higher. So that's a key thing that we're going to work for here in this front rack position. Now let's talk about when you're actually holding the bar, because obviously you're not going to let go of the bar when you're cleaning it. For many of you doing a front rack for the first time, you may find it very difficult in order to get your elbows up high enough. So again, we're talking about that upper part of our arm being parallel to the ground as best as possible. However, if you're really limited in your front rack mobility, you might find that it's going to be really hard to get those elbows up. So here's a couple of tips that might help you. First of all is you are not going to take a full grip on the bar. You might find that opening up some of your fingers, so allowing the bar to rest on your index and middle finger, and maybe taking your pinky and ring finger off the bar may help you in order to get those elbows up a little bit further. Secondly, is you may want to do some front rack mobility drills prior to doing some cleans or having the bar in the front rack position, as it will help you to mobilize and loosen up a lot of the muscles in the back, in the triceps, in the front of the chest and shoulder that are responsible for allowing you to get that mobile position. Here are a few front rack mobility things that you can try to help you get a better front rack position. One of my favorite front rack openers is to have the bar behind the back, and you want to use this bar as a fulcrum point or an anchor point to allow your arms and elbows to rotate around. So you're going to take a full grip on the bar, just outside shoulder width, not too far apart, and holding that bar in a full grip, rotating it around your back. You're going to try to push your elbows up as far as you can. Now you can try doing this with both elbows at the same time, trying to raise them up a little bit higher as you go up, or you can rotate one elbow at a time and seeing if you're able to work on increasing a little bit more distance. Now, as you're doing this, you want to make sure that your ribs are not flaring outward. You want to keep those ribs pulled down. You want to take the distance between your ribs and your hips here and keep that distance the same, so you don't want it to expand. You also don't want it to overly contract either, but keep it neutral. So as your elbows go up, make sure that your ribs, you're pulling those down in the opposite direction. And this, you should feel a good stretch, hopefully through the back of your elbows and the back of your shoulders. A lot of times, if the front of our shoulders and chest is really tight, it might be really hard to get in that front rack position. So one of my favorite drills is to use a lacrosse ball to knead out a lot of the muscle tissue that happens in the front of our shoulder, where our pec attaches to the front of our shoulder here. So if you have a rig post to the side of the door, I'm using the side of this wall here, you're gonna place that lacrosse ball right in the front of that shoulder, so right where that beefy part of the armpit is. You're gonna have that arm straight up ahead. We're gonna do some shoulder raises, back and forth. Kind of really getting that ball to dig in to all those muscle tissues right there. Once you go straight down and forward, you can also go out to the side like angel wings, starting that thumb all the way at the top, and then bring that thumb all the way down to the bottom. Another really great simple stretch to do is to bring your hand behind your back. You can also use your free hand to push it over to that same shoulder, and then you're going to take that back of the elbow, place it against a post, a rig, or the side of a wall. And you're going to work on pressing your chest forward, opening up the angle of your armpit, and really trying to press the backs of your fingers as far down the back as you can. And if you make sure that you're pushing that hand over to the side so it's in line with the shoulder, that's going to help you open up wider rather than having those elbows turn in. You want those elbows to turn out. So make sure you're pressing that hand out so it's in line and cupping the back of that same shoulder as you're doing this drill. And as you're here too, make sure you're pulling those ribs down. You're not allowing your ribs to flare out. Keep pulling those ribs down. Do this for about 30 seconds on each side and see if it makes a difference in the elevation of your elbows. All right, now that we've gone over a few different mobility drills, let's go over how we're gonna get in this rack position. We're aiming to keep the elbows up and pointed to the wall in front of you as best as possible. So again, this is very determinant on your mobility limitations. For some of you, you may be down here a little bit further, but the key point is to have that bar connected to your trunk, to your shoulders and chest, so that your body is supporting the bar and your hands and arms aren't the only thing that are supporting the bar. So always try to keep your elbows slightly in front of the bar if you can. Now we're gonna practice rotating back and forth, keeping that bar connected around our chest and shoulders. So as we're cleaning a barbell, we don't want to pull it any higher than it needs to go and have it drop on our chest. We want to focus on rotating and getting that bar around to the shoulders. So later on, as we go over the hang clean and as we do a few drills, we're gonna have the bar traveling up the shirt, up the chest, and then we're gonna be receiving it in the front rack position. And you wanna make sure that your hands are far enough outside your shoulders where they're not on top of your shoulders, but you're gonna have plenty of room to be able to rotate your hands around. So we're gonna actually start the bar at about mid-sternum, right in the middle of your chest. And you wanna start with the elbows over the bar so that this part of your arm is about parallel to the floor. And what we're gonna try to do is practice, which is keeping that lower body firm still, feet planted into the floor, is simply rotating, opening up the hands. So I'm starting with a full grip on the bar, but I'm opening up my hands as that bar rotates onto the shoulder. And practice just kind of rotating the bar back and forth a few times. And again, you should be using a bar that is light enough for you to be able to do this. If you're starting with a slightly heavier bar and you're finding that it's really tough to be able to get that transition, then I suggest going back down to a training bar that will help you to kind of feel out the rotation a little bit faster. And the speed at which you can rotate and establish that front rack, the better you're going to be able to receive the bar once we try to actually clean it with the addition of our legs. Lastly, before we move on to the hang power clean, we're gonna do a movement called muscle cleans from the hip. So a muscle clean, all we're doing is just using our arms to pull up on the bar. We're gonna shrug our shoulders up to our nose to initiate the pull. So we're starting the bar right at the hips, and we're taking that same grip that we had with our hands just outside the shoulders. They should also be just outside the hips. If you stick your thumbs out, that's about where it is. And we are using our hook grip. So having both of those fingers, index and middle finger, overlapping the thumb to have that secure grip. Starting from the hips, we're gonna start by shrugging up our shoulders to our nose to keep it right, the bar right close to our body. And then we're gonna pull up aggressively with those elbows traveling over the bar. So making sure those forearms are pointed down, knuckles are pointed down to the ground. And then rotating around, trying to rack that bar and get it to meet our shoulders as fast as possible. We're trying to eliminate the bubble of the bar going away from us. We want to keep that bar traveling close to our chest, and then punching, driving those elbows through as fast as possible. The faster you can whip those elbows through, then the faster that you're going to be able to be aggressive with your upper body and rack that bar once we get into the clean. So give that muscle clean a practice just from the high hip, starting with our feet firmly planted, flat on the floor, staying tall, squeezing the butts, but also making sure that at any given point you can flex it back if you need to, keeping the ribs pulled down, same distance between the ribs and hips, and practice a few muscle cleans. I hope you enjoyed this beginner series on learning how to hang clean and go into the push jerk and split jerk. Lastly, be sure to follow me on Instagram. I constantly post weightlifting tips and technique things, mobility drills, a lot of great stuff to learn as a weightlifter, some CrossFit things too. Keep practicing, get strong, and I'll see you soon.